Chapter 9. 5 years of treading water in a bunking swamp, 5 years of endless experiments with medication, 5 years of living in the work-home game cycle. It would have been hard enough on its own. But Thomas managed to toss another dangerous ingredient into this cocktail: alcohol. This wasn't binge drinking or daily consumption. Rather, it was what people call social or situational drinking. The occasions seemed to rise on their own within themselves with discouraging regularity into the fabric of corporate and family life. Colleagues' birthdays that one was expected to celebrate, at least symbolically, after work. Relatives' anniversaries with lavish feasts. Christmas and New Year's, where champagne and stronger drinks flowed generously. Professional holidays, like Banker's Day, when management organized company-wide celebrations. Summer outings in nature with coworkers. Even just Friday get-togethers with the handful of colleagues with whom he managed to maintain something resembling friendly relationships. Drop by drop, this added up to a considerable number of episodes there Thomas found himself with a glass in hand. Why did he drink? His doctor had strictly forbidden him from consuming alcohol. His psychiatrist had repeatedly explained that alcohol is a powerful depressant that disrupts the fragile chemical balance in the brain, negates the effects of medication, and could provoke severe mood swings, worsening the course of his bipolar disorder. Thomas listened, nodded, and broke the rules. Perhaps it was social pressure. He didn't want to stand out in the company, refuse a glass offered to him, or explain his reasons. Maybe he was seeking quick relief in alcohol, a way to ease the tension after a workday, loosen up, feel normal, just like everyone else. A couple of glasses of wine or a shot of brandy could indeed temporarily dull his anxiety, giving him the illusion of relaxation and sociability. He could even hold a conversation, crack a joke, and feel like part of the group. It was an easy way of self-medication, an attempt to cope with his symptoms through an accessible yet destructive method. Or perhaps it was simply a form of denial. By ignoring the doctor's prohibition, it was as if he were telling himself and the world, "I'm not that sick if I can allow myself a drink like everyone else." It was a dangerous game with fire, an attempt to deceive both himself and his illness. And it was an absolute mistake. Each of these episodes of alcohol consumptions, even in moderation, set him back in his treatment, destabilizing the already fragile balance, though he didn't always understand the direct connection. He attributed the worsening of his condition the next day to regular hangovers, not realizing that for his body it wasn't just a hangover, but a significant push toward destabilization. This pattern continued for several years, working tirelessly in a stressful environment, popping handful of pills, and indulging in alcohol occasionally under the guise of social necessity. This fragile construct was held together by sheer luck and the remnants of Thomas's health, and sooner or later it was bound to collapse. The first blow came from the outside. Another banking crisis struck. Rumors started circulating about mergers, reorganizations, and most terrifyingly, layoffs. The atmosphere in the office, already unhealthy, became completely unbearable. Tension hung in the air. People were anxious, weaving intrigues, and scrambling to save their positions. Thomas, with his apathy and detachment, became an easy target. He neither knew how nor wanted to play the game of office politics, nor did he attempt to ingratiate himself with the management. And so he was laid off. They handed him a termination notice and paid the compensation he was entitled to, and showed him the door. He didn't protest or make a scene, unlike the last time during his maniac episode. He simply and silently gathered his few belongings and left. What did he feel? Panic? Despair? Strangely enough, his first emotion was relief. It was as if an unbearable weight had been lifted from his shoulders. No longer did he need to force himself out of bed every morning to face a job he despised, to put on a fake smile, endure the boss's nitpicking, and navigate the toxic work environment. Yes, the future was uncertain, but the sudden freedom from the banking grind felt like a breath of fresh air. It was at this moment, unemployed and alone, that he fully realized something he had long tried to ignore. Working in such a mode, in such an environment, was absolutely incompatible with him. Not because he was a weakling or a failure, but because his illness required entirely different conductions. Because he now understood that health, his health, mattered more than career or money. The crisis and the layoffs became the external factor that forced him to acknowledge the obvious. He realized that he would never return to that hell. He needed to look for something else, something calm and measured, even if it was less prestigious or profitable. However, the understanding of how destructive alcohol had become later, triggered by an internal event, his own birthday. He didn't plan anything special. After losing his job, his mood was far from celebratory, and money was tight. But his parents insisted on a modest family dinner. A few close relatives came over. On the table, along with salads and a cake, sat a bottle of wine and some cognac. At first, Thomas refused, remembering his recent decision to pursue a healthier lifestyle. But the persistent coaxing, "At least a little, for your health, don't disappoint us, it's your day," the overall festive atmosphere, the desire to briefly forget his trouble, they all had their effect. He drank a glass of wine, then another, then a shot of cognac to keep his father and uncle company. He didn't get completely drunk, but it turned out to be enough. The next morning, he woke up with a heavy head and a familiar sense of looming darkness. And a couple of days later, it hit him. It hit him harder than it had in a long time. The bleak depression returned with its full, crushing set of symptoms: apathy, exhaustion, inability to concentrate, guilt, and hopelessness. He lay in his room, staring at the ceiling, and with horrifying clarity, he realized this was it. The price for yesterday's relaxation. Alcohol had once again acted as the trigger, sending him plummeting into the abyss. And once again, the prospect of long months of the grey, hollow existence loomed before him. The next 6 months will be yet another stretch of wasted time, he thought miserably, recalling his unofficial recovery timeline. Right at that moment, at the bottom of his despair, a second, final realization struck. He suddenly saw the connection between alcohol and his state of being with crystal clarity. This wasn't just a hangover. It wasn't just a bad mood. It was a direct consequence, poison for his already fragile mind. He admitted to himself that he had made a mistake. He had foolishly and inexcusably made a mistake, ignoring the doctor's advice, succumbing to social pressure and his own weaknesses. He couldn't go on like this anymore. No more just a little, no more only on holidays, no more for the company. Alcohol needed to be completely eliminated from his life, once and for all. And along with this came another realization about his job. Yes, being laid off had been the trigger, but now he understood it on a deeper level. It wasn't just the toxic environment or the constant nitpicking from his boss. The problem was the very rhythm of the job, the level of responsibility, the constant tension. He needed a job with a more measured pace, a job that wouldn't drain him completely and spark further episodes. Even if it meant a lower salary, even if it wasn't as prestigious, it had to be compatible with his condition. For the first time in years, Thomas felt something akin to firm resolve. He admitted his mistakes. He acknowledged his limitations. And he made a choice. His health, both mental and physical, would now always take priority. Always. This wasn't just talk. It was a necessary condition for survival. No more alcohol. Not a drop. He would look for only calm, balanced work that didn't trigger unnecessary stress. He would take his medications. He would properly see a doctor. He would structure his life in a way that minimized the risk of relapses. This was a bitter realization, born out of pain and despair. But it offered hope. Hope that if he followed these new rules, if he learned to live in harmony with his illness, rather than fighting it or ignoring it, maybe, just maybe, he could break out of this relentless cycle of highs and lows. Maybe he could build a life that, if not brilliant, would at least be stable and meaningful. He lay staring at the ceiling, but now there wasn't just emptiness in his gaze. There was a shadow of resolve, a decision to take responsibility for his life and his health. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy, but he finally had a sense of direction.